Well, hello and welcome to this week's edition of Coffee Club. Myself, Robert Grieve, as ever, with me, Bill Leckie. And Bill, there's been a lot going on in the last few days in Scottish football. We've been talking about him for long enough on this weekly chat. Philip Clement,
Yes.
he's finally away.
Yes. I've said for the last 2 months the Rangers to get shot of him because they just couldn't afford things to get more toxic. And they finally out-toxified themselves on Saturday by losing to St Mirren. And it's a bizarre state of affairs that they didn't get rid of him after Queen's Park, but will get rid of him after St Mirren. And I think it shows a lot of indecision and insecurity behind the scenes at Rangers, the way they've handled it.
Yeah, well, Sunspot broke the story on Sunday.
Robert Grieve broke the story.
On Sunday afternoon. And as you say, it wasn't the biggest surprise in the world, but given that he had survived after Queen's Park, I think there was maybe a feeling at one point that he was going to see out the season. That's what I certainly thought at one stage, but as you say, I think it certainly got to the point after the St Mirren result that I think the directors there, Patrick Stewart, decided and realised that he was causing more damage than potential good for him being there. That's why the decision was made.
I didn't disagree with you when you said that you thought he was going to last to the end of the season, because it looked as if that's what we're going to do. But I think it would have been the wrong decision for Rangers because, especially if any business, well, two things, right? In any other business, you don't keep a failing front man in charge just to see out a random period of time, the way you're talking about the end of the season. And the other thing is, if you're trying to get investment and you're trying to get a takeover, every time you lose a game, every time the fans walk out 20 minutes early, value drops off your price. And they had to make a decision to say, we need to show that we're in charge of this club and we're moving things forward. We're not just muddling along until the end of the season. And I don't think they were left with any option.
Yeah, it was explained to me actually before Philip Clement was sacked. Someone in the kind of business world explained it to me that companies have to get to a point where, as I say, they decide whether it's doing more harm than good.
Yes.
And there's also a culture at companies. There's a culture where you have to maintain standards. If Philip Clement is not been made to pay, essentially, for his standards and the club standards dropping, then what does that say about the guy in the commercial department, the guy in the marketing department? They can say, well, wait a minute, why am I under pressure when he's clearly not under pressure for his job? That's how top firms operate, that they're under pressure to deliver. And Philip Clement essentially wasn't delivering.
No. And equally pertinently there, Robert, we've talked about this before, for Patrick Stewart, who hooked himself to Clement very early on, unnecessarily, by saying it's not the right thing to do, and I'm supporting him. The longer it went, the more his credibility comes under question as well.
But at the same time, and we've not spoken since because we were in Skipo last week doing the podcast. Since then, there's been a huge story that Rangers are in talks over a takeover. And clearly that's been something that's been going on in the background. I'm led to believe, we said this all day, that the talks were ongoing, have been ongoing since October. So that being the case, you can understand why the managerial situation was almost been put in the back burner, because had Rangers didn't want to make this decision as a football club.
In one respect, that I can understand.
Right, so because they're dealing so much with guys who are a takeover, a huge situation that they're having to deal with. Had they asked Philip Clement a month ago, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago, there would then be a clamour for a new manager to be brought in. Not a temporary manager, but a new manager to be brought in. And in all intents and purposes, the club have got more to deal with right now in terms of the takeover. So I think that was a huge part of why Philip Clement was given more time, because I think the board there basically had bigger fish to fry. And that's something, but as I say, they've got to the point where the St Mirren result, when fans are leaving after St Mirren go, not 2-0 ahead, St Mirren go 1-0 ahead at the weekend, so a lot of fans decided that's enough. It was actually 2-0 on the scoreline, and there was 9 minutes, I think, 8 or 9 minutes of injury time played. So a guy behind me in the press box shouted, "Put us out of our misery." They were actually annoyed and angered at the fact that there was more time.
More time to suffer.
They just exactly, because no one in that stadium thought for 1 minute Rangers were going to score one goal, let alone two. So that's why I think the decision was essentially made.
You were at that game on Saturday, I wasn't there. Having watched it back now, I thought Rangers as a team looked absolutely terrified. And if even in isolation, if you looked at that game, you say, well, something is dreadfully wrong with the way this team's been managed, because they looked absolutely petrified on the ball.
They did. And Clement spoke about it after the game. He put it a nervousness.
But he talks about it in isolation as if it's not him.
Yeah, absolutely.
As if it's the players and it's nothing to do with him. It was all to do with him. Everything's to do. You can't just be a united front when you win games.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one, I'm also led to believe that one of the things that he spoke to the players about post-match in the dressing room before he came into the press conference was, I think there was a bit of a exchange, maybe, the best way to put it. Some voices were raised after the game, as you'd expect. And he actually said to them, I believe, listen, you guys, you have to stick together now.
Yeah.
And it was almost,
I'm off.
Yeah. And you guys need to stick together.
Yeah.
I think it was an acceptance that, certainly when he walked into the press conference room, and I said this the other day, I think after he spoke to the media, there was a clear change in his mood.
Yeah.
And as I said, when you're saying, listen, it's up to the board now to make a decision. I think when a manager says that, he's gone. Anyway, he is gone.
He is gone.
And it maybe wasn't the biggest surprise in the world when it was finally decided to part ways. But anyway, they've got a new management team in.
They have.
Barry Ferguson,
yes,
leading the group, which includes some of his other teammates.
Neil McCann, Billy Dodds, Alan McGregor.
Doddsy and Alan McGregor. What did you make of it? It's I think I was certainly not surprised. I thought they would go down they were always going to go down the caretaker interim route.
Yes.
And it didn't surprise me they've gone for someone who has got an understanding of Rangers. But that said, what do you make of it?
There are two ways of looking at this. One, it's a very, very Rangersy thing to do. Go and get some people that understand the club, put them in, appease the fans,
Which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Which is not necessarily a bad thing if it's the right thing. The other side of it is, if you're looking at it from the outside and you just said, so this guy Rangers brought... If Rangers brought in a guy from France as a caretaker manager with Barry Ferguson's record as a manager,
like a Paul again,
yeah, with Barry Ferguson's record as a manager,
people
will be raging. But it balances out with the fact that he's Barry Ferguson, right? And he talked very well on his introduction. He's a 47-year-old man now. He's not wee Barry Ferguson anymore. He's a grown man. He's grown as he's going to be. And he brings to it a knowledge of Rangers and what it takes to survive, even not just succeed, but to survive at Rangers, which Philippe Clement never had. That's a starting point. But that maybe tells you what Rangers want to have in the dugout rather than what they think they should have in the dugout,
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I think on the face of it, I can understand why directors there have gone down the route of getting someone in who knows the club.
100%.
I don't think it's pure and simple as getting someone who the fans are going to jump all over, because I don't necessarily think they have done. No. I think I've certainly got pals who are surprised that Barry Ferguson's the guy that's been brought in. But I can understand the theory in getting someone who knows the club. Whether he is the right man, time will tell. But one thing you have to say about Barry Ferguson, whether you love him or loathe him, he's someone who had a top career in the game by driving standards.
Yes.
That was his thing.
Yes.
That was his thing. And I actually think the reason why he maybe struggled and didn't become the successful manager that he maybe thought he could be when he finished playing and he went to clubs is because he was dealing with guys at a certain level. And Barry as a player was top level.
And it's a classic thing in football management, Robert, that sometimes the best players or the players with the highest standards, they go and start somewhere down the food chain to work their way up, which is a very
admirable thing to do.
Noble thing to do.
Absolutely.
But they go into training and they'll say, here's the thing we're going to do. We go biff, 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 and it takes them 5 times to get it, and it drives them nuts.
Yeah.
And so you might find that Barry Ferguson is a better manager with a better standard of player.
Yeah.
The thing he talked about in his unveiling about desire and all that kind of stuff, I would say if they don't have that desire already, it's going to be very hard.
Well, they don't.
They don't have.
I think it's absolutely clear as day that the Rangers players right now don't have the desire.
So Barry Ferguson, Neil McCann, Billy Dodds, Alan McGregor would all run through a brick wall for whoever they were playing for.
Yeah.
They were those kind of guys. And I think they'll look at some of these players in the dressing room and say, I don't know if I can get that out of this guy. Maybe get them motivated a bit more. Maybe the pressure of the whole Clement thing is gone. They might relax a little bit. But I don't know. I just don't know how you get a better tune out of something.
I certainly think there are players. I'm not. I certainly think there are players in that Rangers squad right now who had given up with Philip Clement, who didn't want to play for Philip Clement, who were past the point of no return with Philip Clement. I think the fact that he's literally out the door now, I think there'll be an immediate change like that.
What does that tell you about them though?
Yeah, it's rightly or wrongly, absolutely. But that's human nature.
Yeah.
If you get to a point where you're working for someone you essentially, I wouldn't go as far as say you don't respect, but if you've switched off from, then it's human nature. And I think whoever went into Rangers now was going to get an immediate spark, was going to get an immediate reaction. Whether they're capable of going from where they are right now to where they have to be to finish the season strongly, time will tell. But I think there will be a reaction, because I certainly think that there were a number of players there who had completely given up with the manager and got to a point where they simply weren't convinced that he was the right man.
Might there
that might not be the right thing. No. You're absolutely right.
Might there also be players there, Robert, though, who came in under Clement and bought into his thing and now probably can't wait to get out the door now that he's gone?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I genuinely think that's probably the case. But I think Barry Ferguson and the guys that he's got with him will get a reaction. I think it'll be surprising if they don't get a reaction, I say, because they're actually at kind of rock bottom. We thought, as I say, the Queen's Park game clearly, in terms of result, was rock bottom, but they were absolutely dire against St Mirren at the weekend. I certainly Andy Devon before the game, I actually said to him before the game, I fancy someone today, I genuinely did, and he's like, you wouldn't be surprised, it's the way it is. And as soon as St Mirren played them like a fiddle, two big guys up front, bullied the two centre-backs at Rangers, Robin Proper and
Clinton and
Ciala.
And Clinton and Ciala, for a guy who's come from AC Milan, Clinton and Ciala, every time I've seen him, has looked so, again, scared. For a big, strong boy.
He's just got a lot to learn in the game, but you look at Robin Proper, I just cannot for the life of me still understand why someone looked at him and decided he was the player that you can build a defence around. He's just nowhere near it, absolutely nowhere near it. But as I say, I do expect a reaction, and I tell you what, for all that Barry Ferguson's last gig was at Alloa a number of years ago, which is one of the things that will have Rangers fans scratching their head.
Yeah.
Or if you were looking at this from the outside, if you didn't know Barry Ferguson, you'd say, a guy who was Alloa manager 2 or 3 years ago, who's been a media pundit, radio pundit, newspaper pundit for the last 2 or 3 years, suddenly becomes a manager of Rangers. How does that happen?
Yeah.
What I will say though is, Neil McCann is as switched on as they come.
Well, I was going to bring him in there.
Billy Dodds is as switched on as they come, and also a bubbly character who will, I think, lift the place. And they've also Al McGregor. Surprised at that one, in all honesty. I thought Colin Stewart, the goalkeeping coach who was there before, I think he can maybe feel hard done by. Do you think
McGregor's there as goalkeeping coach?
Oh, he's there because he's pal. He's Barry Ferguson's pal. It's as simple as that. And again, I don't like that element of it. No. Al McGregor, what a goalkeeper, a Rangers legend, undeniably. But that's just for me. Bringing in one of his pals. But the guys that he's brought in know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think Neil McCann especially, Doddsy, these guys know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think Barry might be he will be the focal point and the face of it. But I would imagine Doddsy and Neil McCann will be the guys on the training pitch.
I've spoken to Neil a few times at games recently, and he's talked about Rangers and he's talked about what he's seen and what he, and this is long before he's associated, but it's not as if he's saying I'm going to go back in there. It was just talking about tactically where Rangers go wrong, and he produced a brilliant piece of punditry on the BBC at the weekend on Sports Scene about the St Mirren game, and it's early in the game at 0-0, as a throw into Rangers, as an option to go forward, and they go back with the throw, and then they go negative for the pass, and it ends up back to Jack Butland, who's got nowhere to go, who panics. And St Mirren have a double chance, and he makes 2 great saves.
Came for a throw one.
And that was, and I think that's the thing that's been bugging Neil McCann watching Rangers, is the negativity and the fear.
Yeah.
And I'll be really interested to see how quickly he can get an impact on them changing that fear and negativity into positivity.
Yeah, listen, Barry spoke at his press conference and he said, he said something about giving guys a clip round the ear. He can't do that these days. I mean, I know he's maybe probably been
figurative.
Yeah, exactly. But I think what he will do.
It's what he got as a kid.
Absolutely. There's a time and a place for it. Probably in a dressing room. But I think he definitely will bring a new energy to that dressing room. And if you're a Rangers player, I think you'd be wise. Listen, you'd be wise to kind of listen. And again, for all he's not been a manager for a long time, Barry Ferguson's got a serious amount of experience in football. You know, he's worked with some of the best managers that Rangers have had. He worked with Walter Smith a couple of times.
Dick Advocaat.
Alex McLeish's success there. Obviously, the Paul again situation kind of muddies the waters a little bit in terms of when you think about Barry and Rangers, but it's a guy that won a 15
in terms of his
trophies.
Influence in the dressing room when the manager was
listen,
under pressure.
I think Barry was absolutely 100% in the right in that whole thing. It was in the back of a 1-1 draw against Inverness, and all he did essentially was say, "This isn't good enough." Philip Clement, Paul Le Guin, ball accounts, was in that dressing room saying, "Guys, that was good. We got a draw." And Barry, all he did was make out that that's not good enough. And I think if you're the captain of the Rangers, that's exactly what you should be saying. And that's exactly what you should be.
And it's what somebody should have been saying for the last 3-4 months at Rangers, because every time Philip Clement comes out and says, "Oh well, we had 342 shots," it just embarrasses Rangers.
I think Ferguson at that point was made the scapegoat about a lot of what was going on behind the scenes there at Rangers at that time. But it does, when you think about, I spoke to Chris Boyd the other day, who was in that dressing room and at Rangers at that time famously did the six fingers thing when he scored against Motherwell a few days later. And he spoke about it, and for me, Barry Ferguson was 100% right in that situation. But he did make a lot of mistakes as a player, the whole Scotland thing and whatever else. But as you say, he's all the man he's ever going to be now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe this is, by the way, it's an opportunity for him.
Well,
if Rangers were to be not successful, but if Rangers were to go on a run domestically between now and the end of the season, string some results together, change the mentality of the club, and he's part of that. By the way,
who knows?
Come the end of the season,
It could be part of something.
if things don't fall into place with whoever the new investors are looking at, and there are a lot of names flying around and a lot of guys who I know they have spoken to, Barry Ferguson's in the box seat right now.
Yeah.
Who's to say that he doesn't become someone who's a serious candidate for the job?
I thought he talked very, very well, very maturely in his unveiling press conference. It was what Rangers fans, I think, would have wanted to hear, which is sometimes an easy thing to do. But I felt as if he really meant it. You know, I felt as if he meant it. And yeah, you can. His line was, I'd rather be judged at the end of the season, but I know I'll be judged in every single game, and it starts at Kilmarnock.
Yeah, and I think that's fair enough.
A few hours from now.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's the truth.
Aye.
That is absolutely the truth. If you're a manager getting in there, whether he's an interim or a permanent manager, you do want to be judged over a period of time. But equally, he's got an understanding as a Rangers player for so many years that no, it's on a week-to-week basis at Rangers.
But here's the one, the first one. I don't think there could be a more stringent test of what they're made of than away to Kilmarnock, where they absolutely hate going. They've hated it for years now. They lost there earlier on in the season. It was the kind of start of them looking wobbly. And if you go down there against Kelly with the shape Kelly play, getting the ball wide, thumping balls in the box, getting big men in for long throws, that's a real test of what Barry's trying to instill into this Rangers team.
Yeah.
And if he's got 2 days to turn around that mentality from Saturday against St Mirren, if you see a different Rangers tonight, I think it'll say a lot in a negative way about what those players are.
I think that's true, but I think that's fact already.
Yeah.
I think that's fact already. What I will say as well, I think there will, he hinted at this, I think there'll be changes.
Yeah, definitely.
Not even to the structure, I think there'll be changes to the...
Younger boys coming in.
Maybe a few bit of freshness, I think, will be in the squad and the team. And then maybe that's something that will make a difference. But I think he will have a clear idea, as I say, with the guys that he's working with, have a clear idea of something that they can change, right away, that maybe does bring change right away.
Here's a question. I think you'll change the goalkeeper?
No.
No? I think you'll stick with him?
Yeah.
I think Jack Butland looks a bag of nerves at the moment.
It's fair. I think that's fair comment. Funny enough, it was actually, who was I talking to? I was talking to someone in the back of the game at Ibrox at the weekend, and I think if you were to analyse Jack Butland as a Rangers signing, you would say it's been a success, that he's been a good Rangers signing, a good Rangers goalkeeper this season, right?
This season?
I think you would say he's been a good Rangers signing.
He's been a good, I don't think he's been good this season.
However, well, a good Rangers signing overall.
Uh-huh.
However, he makes mistakes.
I don't think he's recovered since the last minute of the cup final last season. I think he was immaculate right up until then he was terrific for Rangers, and I think since then he's taken a real knock. And this season he's made.
Yeah, I was meaning generally. I think if you were to analyse Jack Butland as a Rangers signing, you would say he's been a good signing.
I think he's a very
However,
good,
he makes mistakes. He makes high profile.
I think he's a very good
mistakes.
goalkeeper, and he's been a very good signing who's having a very bad run at the moment, and who on Saturday again that kick out where he ends up rescuing it with a sort of dramatic save, but he just looks a bag of nerves sometimes, and I wondered. I was just throwing a question out whether Barry might say Liam Kelly is in, and also if you're the new manager in the dressing room, you say, I will make changes that I want to make, and there's no favouritism.
Yeah, that's fair comment. I think that's fair.
But you don't think he will though?
I'd be surprised. I think Butland isn't the biggest problem.
No, he's not the biggest problem, but he is a problem.
I wonder if defensively, and there aren't many options they've got. That's been one of the problems they've got. Excuse me. I wonder if defensively something he looks at. I think that has to, as I say, the defensive pairing at the back.
That was weakened, and Kevin Clancy got himself in a mess with the first St Mirren goal because it's quite obvious that Nsiala trips himself up as the ball goes through the middle, and to me, now I know that when Olasanya come off the bench and Mandron, when they play well, are a handful, but Rangers should have defenders that are big enough to cope with what St Mirren can do. With all that
St Mirren's game plan,
for all that both of us love St Mirren, and it's great when you see a plan come together. Rangers should have defenders that are better than that.
Yeah, but it generally was no surprise to me. I saw the team sheet and you could see exactly what Steve Robinson was going to do with the two big guys.
Lump,
and he was
chase,
thinking,
run,
60 minutes, I'll bring Lasagna on, and by that point we were already, Swan were already 1-0 ahead.
You can say we.
So when we were already 1-0 ahead, but Rangers were absolutely gone,
Yeah.
But time will tell what happens next. They've got a big decision to make. Say whether it ends up being Barry Ferguson, who does well enough to keep the job.
Yeah.
Time will tell with that. There's a lot of names flying around. The story the other day that Russell Martin's one of the names who is being considered.
I'll put this right out here now. That'd be a mistake.
I'm not so sure. But he's certainly one who is being considered. One of them, not the one. I think there are a few, but I think there is absolutely not bad.
It's not a Russell Martin fan anyway, is it?
No, it's Russell Martin just walked. No, there's absolutely something to that. Whether that develops, time will tell, but I would keep an eye on that one. Like and subscribe, as always. We need to keep reminding people, apparently, that if you like what you're seeing and if you get any comments to make, fill in the blanks down below. There's somewhere beneath these cakes. And we've done well with the cakes, Bill.
Beautiful cakes.
We've been looked after.
You've got tiramisu again. Some lovely, I like old-fashioned kind of Paris buns.
Oh, you're an old-fashioned kind of man.
I'm an old-fashioned kind of man, but...
An old-fashioned man with old-fashioned dress sense. It's better this week, right enough.
I waited to see how long...
You've not got your Green Brigade hoodie on. Someone said that to me. Can
we just edit that wee bit there, Robert? Because you are determined that at some point I'm going to walk out of this podcast and there'll be 75 people waiting for me.
It was a bit kind of...
It was a camouflage hoodie.
Okay. But yeah, time will tell on that one. That was at Celtic Park, fun enough, last night.
Of course you were.
For the Celtic's game against Aberdeen. Celtic actually didn't play particularly well, bizarrely.
No.
Certainly earlier on, Aberdeen could have been 2-0 up in the first 10 minutes. They had some great chances they didn't take advantage of. By half time, they were 3-0 down. It's a game we keep seeing time and time again where teams go to Celtic Park in particular, don't take their chances
and then get overrun.
Yeah. But
it's just levels, isn't it?
Celtic now, they're just they're almost kind of freewheeling. They obviously lost to Hibs last weekend. A brilliant result for them. We'll come to them in a minute actually, because I think they're worth talking about. But from a Celtic point of view, they're almost kind of freewheeling towards the title now, aren't they? Very little for them to get excited about in terms of the league. Till it's done.
The atmosphere, I only watched it on TV last night, the atmosphere felt reasonably flat as the game settled in, as it tends to sometimes at Celtic Park now. Aberdeen had those two brilliant chances. They've got to take at least one of them. When they didn't, I felt as if they went, oh well, that's us. And then they sat in and it was a kind of waiting for it to happen. Yeah. And even when the goals came, they were kind of... First couple of goals a bit scruffy and,
the Jota goal, we kind of scuffed it now.
Yeah, and yet, by half time, you suddenly go, wait a minute, it's 3-0 Celtic. It could have been 3-0, it could have been 4-0, it could have been anything. And then you know that it's going to go a bit dull. Then they're going to score later on. And the only slight surprise was that Celtic switched off and blew the chance of a little bit of history of the 10 domestic games without losing a goal.
Yeah, I was delighted with that Aberdeen late goal, considering I'd
you had written
about 10 paragraphs in my match report about how great Celtic were defensively and hadn't conceded since.
It was a poor goal to lose.
And it was, yeah. But saying that, they had a chance earlier, they had a chance before they scored.
Yeah.
They didn't take Aberdeen. But I generally was actually, I wouldn't say impressed by Aberdeen, but they were actually decent. Initially, you know, they went there with a bit of bravery. They didn't just sit back. They actually went there and said, let's have a go. And
do you know what I kind of felt about? I felt as if they went with bravery. I liked his shape. I liked what he did. But I felt as if they were only brave until they realised it's like we talked about before. Everybody's got a plan till they get punched in the face. Yeah. You know, and it's as if they were really brave until they realised that actually we're not as brave as we think we are.
Yeah.
And then they started to sit in. And also they kind of run out of legs in the middle of the park a wee bit sometimes. You know, when it's when you're sitting there with like Jensen, Nielsen, Shinnie, boys like that, the legs kind of go a little bit. They were missing a couple of players, and they got overrun. Actually, they never got overrun in the end. They just got kind of passed out of it.
I think they realised the game was done at half time. I mean, let's be honest, if you're sitting there at half time, 3-0 down to Celtic, regardless of how you played, it's game over. But it's damage limitation.
But you saw Hibs on Saturday, they did take their chance early on in the game. They took a really good chance early on in the game, and then they kept their foot on it for as long as they could.
What have you made of them? Because we spoke about them a number of weeks ago. I remember when, at the time when David Gray was under serious pressure, and by the way, he was at a point where he was one game away from being emptied.
He was said at the time 20 seconds.
Yeah.
From the end of the Aberdeen game in October time, whatever it was, and they were 3-2 down, and Rocky Bashiri scored with basically the last touch of the ball. Yeah. If they had lost that game, they were going to be 28 points behind Aberdeen. Wow. If they win tonight against Dundee United, they'll be 1 point behind Aberdeen.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's what David Gray has done under ridiculous amounts of pressure. Now, some people might say, with the money Hibs have spent and the squad they have, this is where they should be, which is probably true. But from the chaos they were in at the start of the season, the run they went on when they just didn't look as if they were going to get out of trouble, right up to that Aberdeen game, and his manner throughout it all, his courage, the way he stuck to his guns, and the way he is. There's key players in that team, and Josh Campbell's a perfect example. Now, last season I would have said to you, what is Josh Campbell? He's maybe a midfield player, he's maybe a wide guy, but he's usually a sub. He's maybe an impact player. Now he's the guy they build the whole attacking process around. Rocky Bashiri has grown into a much more dependable defender. Guys like Triantis in the middle of the park, who was all over the place early in the season, suddenly looks a player. And that's David Gray's management. Yeah. And had the guys around about him. But David Gray's management this season has been nothing short of outstanding.
Yeah, absolutely. I could not agree with you more. As I say, he was under genuine pressure, and he was genuinely on the verge of the sack there. Yeah. I think he knew it.
I got sent to Fir Park the Saturday after the Aberdeen game on the Wednesday night, and he would have gone, I think, after the Aberdeen game, I think, if they'd lost. And the gaffer says to me, go to Fir Park on Saturday. If they lose there, I think that's probably the end. And they won 3-0, and they were absolutely outstanding. Yeah.
But that was the thing, Bill, because even I remember seeing them against Celtic at Celtic Park.
They were brilliant.
They were absolutely brilliant.
But again, like Aberdeen, they had 3 one-on-ones.
Exactly.
And they never took them, and they end up losing 3-0.
Yeah.
But I think that was a big learning game. That was the last game I think they lost. And I think that day went, we need to be more clean. We need to start believing in ourselves. We need to start taking our chances. And now you watch them, and they really do. They kept their foot on Celtic's neck for that whole first half. And okay, things turned around a bit in the second half, but they defended brilliantly. I mean, that at the end with Bashiri, he's up one end, they're claiming for a penalty. Yeah. He's got cramp. He's limping back. He gets back to the goal line to clear from Jota. And that's just heroic stuff. That's brilliant.
It was. I'm actually really pleased for David Gray, actually, because I think at the point where he was under real pressure, he didn't change. No. Didn't change in terms of his team. He persisted with them.
Or his attitude.
And he also didn't change his attitude. He would come into press conferences. He was matter of fact. Yeah. He didn't try and hide from anything. He fronted up. He said it wasn't good enough.
Yep.
He was aware of how serious it was in terms of his own position, but he didn't hide from it. And I thought at that point, fair play to you. We've seen so many managers when they are under pressure, they become different people.
And also we talked about
this.
We talked about this months ago. The Americans who have invested, the Bournemouth crowd, Bill Foley and his Black Knights, who've invested, they probably weren't very keen on him in the first place. And they probably got somebody sitting...
Maybe.
You know,
not so sure about that, but yeah, maybe.
I think
he's a Hibs legend.
Yes,
I mean, he's Sir David Gray.
But if you had said to them, in the way Hearts have done with the Brighton guys, Tony Bloom, could you use your analytics to find us people?
Yeah.
If they had said to them, find a manager, they wouldn't have picked David Gray.
No,
equally,
these guys don't want to make a change unless they have to make a change. If you'd emptied David Gray and his coaching staff, there's a financial ramifications of that. So they wouldn't have wanted to do that had they not had to. But I take your point, you're right. If they were to handpick someone, they probably would have come up with someone maybe from their own database.
You now look at it and you go, they play Dundee United tonight. They get a result there. They're pushing right on Aberdeen. The derby at the weekend with Hearts, and I'm so looking forward to being there for the paper on Sunday lunchtime. It's going to be just one of the classics.
Do you think, as you said, there's that game tonight, Dundee United play Aberdeen at the weekend.
Yeah,
there's a derby. This could be a pivotal 2 or 3 days, 4 days for who is going to be in the box seat for third.
Well, tonight, as far as the top 6 itself go, if Hearts beat St Mirren tonight, they'll go into the top 6 for the first time this season, so they'll be in there. If Kilmarnock were to get a result against Rangers, they start to get a little push towards it. Ross County are coming with a bit, so everything starts to concertina there.
And Rangers.
And there you go. So in that middle bit, everything concertinas. But up the top, if results go Hibs' way over the next couple of games, they could be third. If results go Aberdeen's way over the next couple of days, they could be pushing away in third. So it's a massive sort of 4 or 5 days coming up. Really exciting.
Do we think, I mean, Stephen Robinson spoke the other day about if St Mirren can get into the top 6, for him, that'll be their biggest achievement since he's been there.
In this league, yes.
Would you agree with that?
This season with the squads that are...
punching above their weight, aren't they?
Well, yeah, and as we've said before on here, the more you punch above your weight, the more people expect that's going to be your weight. If St Mirren could be in the top 6 for a third season, I think, Europe's, I think, probably beyond St Mirren this season with the teams that are above them. But when you think that what Aberdeen have spent, what Hearts have spent, what Hibs have spent, even Dundee United, they have got bigger budgets than St Mirren. If St Mirren could be top 6, or Kilmarnock, you're looking at probably one of St Mirren, Kilmarnock, Dundee, maybe, and Ross County.
Dundee on the slide.
They're not, but they are on the slide. But as you know, in this league, you can go 3-4 games getting hammered, and then suddenly you get 3-4 games. It's such an unpredictable league.
It's going to also be an interesting few months for St Mirren, I think, or it will be. Yeah. Excuse me, because I think there are 12 players who are out of contract in the summer.
Yeah,
which is staggering.
Yeah.
To have got themselves in that position, but maybe the manager Stephen Robinson, the guys on the board will be thinking there's scope there to move things around. Stephen Robinson, I think, is as shrewd as they come in terms of getting players in.
Yes.
I think he will know exactly.
That's something I would trust him in completely.
Yeah, I think he will know exactly what he's going to be doing.
Yeah.
And maybe he was sitting there right now thinking, great, we've got a bit of scope to maybe reinvent the squad a little bit, but it's going to take a lot to do that because St Mirren, I think, have been punched above their weight. I think the job he's done has been remarkable, and there's going to be a real transition there in the coming months.
If I was a player...
12 players, Bill, that's a lot of players.
It's a lot of players. But if I was a player who he was interested in, I would look at a player like, for instance, Toyosi Olasanya, who, when he came to St Mirren at first, looked as if he'd won a competition. Genuinely. Sent him in loan to Arbroath, couldn't get a game at Arbroath either. Came back, and whatever Stephen Robinson did in the close season after his first season, the boy suddenly came back with a different attitude, and this is where Stephen Robinson's a really good manager, as he gets... He mends birds with broken wings, he makes them better again, he makes players stronger, he makes them believe in themselves. And Olasanya's turned into a player now who will probably get a good deal down south.
Yeah, I think that's the way it's heading.
On the money that St Mirren couldn't pay him.
Yeah, I think that's the way certainly it's heading. From.
And that's, if you're a player that St Mirren are looking at, they're a great club now to come to, while Stephen Robinson's there, to come and build yourself a platform in a selfish way to go back and get yourself something bigger. Yeah,
I think that's certainly the way it's heading. I think there will be players in that dozen who Stephen Robinson and the club would do want to keep, and I think Olasanya would probably be one of them that they would want to keep. But I do think the way it's going, it's unlikely to happen now because I think he's seen himself as getting to a wage bracket that St Mirren don't want to pay.
And why wouldn't he?
Won't want to pay. Good luck to the boy. But I think that's probably the way it's heading. But I think Stephen Robinson will. I think he'll already have, and the club will already have a strategy in place and how he can take things forward, but it's going to be a big.
Do you think the club have a strategy for what happens if Stephen Robinson gets an offer?
I don't know if they'll have a strategy, but I think there'll be an expectancy that could happen because he's done such a good job consistently now.
Yeah.
It's not been a flash in the pan. You know, this is a guy who's consistently punched above his weight, and I think, and we spoke about this a number of months ago, I think one of the things that maybe, if you were doing a checklist of what Stephen Robinson was as a manager, he ticked so many boxes, and I think one of the boxes he maybe didn't tick was bringing through younger players.
And now he started doing it.
And I think that's
there's also for
something that will
for
stand in a good stead.
clubs higher up the food chain. There's also his style of football, which certainly, whether you find if he goes to a bigger club with better players, he maybe changes it, but it's a very pragmatic way of playing football.
Yeah, but it's a successful way of playing.
Yeah.
I think he's a kind of guy who, and he did it the same at Motherwell. I think he works with the tools
With what
he's
he
got.
has himself.
And that's a good manager.
So let's just say
there's no point in him being an open, expansive manager and looking at the squad and saying, I've not got guys that can do that, you know.
But if he went to an Aberdeen, a Hearts or Hibs, for instance, at some point, with better players, or players, you know, who have come on a bigger budget, whatever, from a higher standard of football, than he's picking from just now, do you think he might be a more expansive manager?
Potentially, I think he would work with what he's got.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, and I think Jimmy Tillane, the jury's still out at Aberdeen. But for me, I was staggered that they didn't go for Stephen Robinson.
Probably because they went for Jim Goodwin before.
Probably, but I actually think it was.
They've taken almost every manager they can over the last 40 years.
It's probably what counted against them, for being honest about it. But I think there are certainly people there who maybe did think that Stephen Robinson would be the right man. But the club as a whole didn't want to go down that road. But for me, Jimmy Tillane might turn out to be a good manager. I think the jury is still out. But Stephen Robinson, anyway, we'll see what happens with him in the coming months. Don't want to lose him, do we?
No, not particularly. Not particularly.
Try to see him at the door.
No, not me. I would. If he keeps winning the games like the way he did on Saturday, he would stay forever.
Yeah. So us.
Why not? Eat some cakes.
Eat some cakes. We've gone old fashioned a wee bit today.
But tiramisu's always that's our 7 out of 10 every week in the middle of the park, doing a great job. You would only realise.
Build your team around a bit of tiramisu.
Well, if it wasn't there, you would realise how much you missed it. You know what I mean? So.
You're not at a game tonight, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm going to.
All right. Night off.
No,
You've been in a game this week.
Stop it.
Have you?
No, not done a midweek game.
Happy with that.
I'm doing some of the other things in my life tonight.
All right, okay. No, say no more. That's us for this week's Coffee Club for Morning Bill's life outside a coffee club. We'll hear about that next week. I'll say like and subscribe beneath there somewhere. Send us your comments. Let us know what you think about Barry Ferguson, about Philip Clement, about Celtic, about Aberdeen, Hibs, everything. Let us know what you think, and we'll catch up with you next week.